I started the first 12 years of my career as a biotechnologist, really focusing on biology. And the last 12 years I spent on technology because I realized that our biology actually doesn't evolve that quickly. It's not going to evolve in our lifetime. It's staying the same. What's changing is our environment and the technology we adopt into our lives. That's what's changing. That's what's causing our behavioral change. That's what's causing a lot of the beauty and a lot of the pain that we're experiencing in the world. Technology starts off magical. It's Steve Jobs walking out on stage with his wonderful creations, and we all want one. And then it becomes manic. It's when it's hyper-connecting us, pinging us from every which way, taking our time and our attention. And then it becomes toxic. It's when we're sitting around the dinner table with family and friends, all staring at our screens. Or when technology automates us out of a job because it just does it better. So to start this story off, before we dive into the human psychology part of it, we're going to have a little bit of fun with technology, right? Continue on from last night's party. So I want to take you back to a very special year, 1997. It was a year that Steve Jobs came back to Apple, the very same company that fired him 12 years earlier. Now, Apple is arguably the biggest company on the planet today and arguably the most successful. Most of us have even licked their products. And when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he launched a Think Different campaign. And he did this for a couple of reasons. On the one side, it was very inspirational. But on the other side, it was also a warning sign. Because remember, he never gave these things to his kids. You've got to remember, this was a pivotal moment in human history. The rise of the internet, connectivity. This connection machine, which is what the internet is, it connects things, creates copies of things, makes things exponential. And it disrespects borders. It dematerializes them, makes them irrelevant. It only respects them to the level of regulation we impose upon them and to the rules that you code into them. On the one side, you have the US and the UK hyper-connecting themselves over the last 2 decades. And what are they doing now? Trump and Brexit? They're pulling back, trying to go back to the way it used to be. But on the other side, you have China, who have been protecting themselves from this connection machine. They've understood the dangers of hyperconnection from the beginning. And now they see it as opportunity, an opportunity to expand beyond their borders through technology. Alibaba, Tencent, and the billions of IoT devices they've infected the world with, because a lot of these devices have still got their default settings, default administrative settings, so it allows anybody to access anything. We've seen that over the last couple of years. Technology is wonderful at bringing us closer together, but the information that flows through it often pulls us further apart. So when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he launched a Think Different campaign because he realized that nothing remarkable in this world comes from following the status quo. This was really a campaign about us, about the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the ones that pushed the human race forward. We read books about them, we made movies about them. They inspired us, we even let them lead us. But don't be fooled, these crazy ones, they're all around us, maybe even in this room. As we move from a world of products to services, we're going to need you to think different. As we move from a world of ownership to access, we're going to need you to think different. And as we move from a world of scarcity into a world of abundance, we're going to need you to think different. Because you see, that's what technology does. It turns scarce resources into abundant ones. A couple of examples. Who here uses Spotify? Everybody, right? We used to buy a cassette, a CD, an MP3, and now we access 42 million songs for the price of a cup of coffee. Mobility. People used to own their mode of transportation, but now in hyper-connected cities, we access mobility through things like Uber and Lyft. And energy. None of this stuff would work without energy. Did you know there's enough energy from the sun that hits the earth in 1 hour to power our global energy needs for a whole year? The problem is not energy. The problem is access to energy. And technologies like solar panels solve for this. This piece of paper that I've brought up here, this piece of paper represents the biggest innovation known to man since the internet. Printing press, Gutenberg, 500 years ago. What this represents is our ability to remember things beyond our brains, because we forget. And we can write it down. Now we can communicate afar, cross these borders, remember things after we die because it's on paper. But even this piece of paper is becoming obsolete now. We're in a digital era. We don't send letters anymore. We email, we chat. And in this piece of paper is the key to technology. The power of technology can be demonstrated with this piece of paper. For that, I'm going to need 2 brave volunteers. Now, brave volunteers. Now, I've got a challenge here. We've got a high stage. Usually I can get people up on stage. A couple of volunteers, a couple of people that are willing to take some arrows, pioneer things. You know, ideally, Adam and Eve, a man and a woman. Let's get this gender diverse. Now, I had a look in the crowd. There aren't many women here. I spotted a couple of brave ones. Who's brave enough to come up on stage? You'll have to jump. Oh, look, we got a front row center. I queued him up. Awesome. A lady? A lady? Someone? Oh, yes, we have one here. I queued her up too. Zara, she's brave. If anyone else wants to come up, that's fine. I've got extra pieces of paper.
Cheers.
All right, so I've got the moon up here. Now, while they're doing the exercise, I want you to think. It's a mindset training. How many times would they have to fold this piece of paper in half? It's 0.1 millimeters thick, like this. How many times would they have to fold it for the thickness of the piece of paper to reach the moon? 384,000 kilometers away. Start thinking. Come up with a number. And you can start folding. 3, 4. Count as you fold. Who knows this exercise already? Oh, not that many hands. Not that many hands. Less than 10%. I always ask that.
At some point, this is going to be troublesome.
So I'm at 6. Now I'm at 6 now. Most people can get to 7. No one's ever gotten to 8. You've got to be really strong. How'd you go? 7?
I didn't really count, actually.
Okay. Guys, it looks like 7. Guys get to 7. You can get to 7. Oh, you've got some innovative folding there. Okay. That's great. That's great. This is awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Is this a fold?
This is pretty good. I'll count it later. You may have a record here. Thank you. Our hands for our brave pioneers. Thank you. Just watch the jump there. So you see, you run out of resources. You run out of the ability to fold. But technology solves for that. Technology solves for scarcity. It makes things abundant. With technology, you can keep solving. So let's have a look at the math. Because you all love those math, right? At 7 times, I ran out of the ability to fold. At 14 times, I reached the height of a small child. At 25 times, I crossed the finish line of a marathon. At 30 times, I hit a satellite. And at 42 times, you land on the moon. But at 50 times, you reach the sun. And at 100 times, you cross the entire observable universe of 46 billion light years. You see, that's the power of exponential growth. And that's the power of technology. And that's what's causing all our pain, because you see, technology grows exponentially, but we don't. As human beings, we've evolved over millions of years. But technology evolves over decades to years. And now, with AI, machine learning, and self-learning algorithms, months, weeks, and minutes. 100 folds to cross the entire observable universe. How crazy is that? Has anyone, anyone here have kids? We've all been kids ourselves. Remember?
We're still kids.
We're still kids, yeah, just big kids. Remember that number when we were like 3 or 4? The biggest imaginable number. We couldn't think past it. 100. If you've got kids now with 3 or 4, you'll see 100. They can't think past that number. Well, maybe they're not far from the truth. Maybe they were born thinking exponentially. Maybe, 100 is the biggest possible number you can imagine, because anything to the power of 100 is basically infinity to human comprehension. Has anyone here looked up what Google means? No? Show of hands. Have you looked up in the dictionary what Google means? A lot of you, yeah. So it's a misspelling, right? That's how nerdy the founders were. They misspelled their own company name. It's actually Goggle. And it means something. It's a number. It is simply 10 to the power of 100. So you see, the Google founders were onto something. When you apply technology to things, you give them exponential growth. And when things grow exponentially, the possibilities are limitless. So let's continue on from last night's tradition, rockets and spaceships and planets, and who knows who this this character is here in the corner. Elon Musk. Right? He's having a tough time right now, I must admit. But that's what happens when you're a pioneer. You see, pioneering hurts. Pioneers take the arrows. Settlers take the land. You see, Elon Musk catalyzes industries. He reinvents industries. And he's really the pioneer of our society today, the entrepreneur that's got that stamp of just being crazy and doing things that nobody else dares to do, which is what entrepreneurship is really. It's just finding a way and doing the things that other people aren't willing to do. And that hurts, because you take arrows. And, what's Elon Musk doing? Well, he's reinventing mobility with Tesla, SpaceX, Hyperloop, the Boring Company, trying to solve the traffic problems, go under cities, and reinventing energy with SolarCity and gigafactories, and even challenging what it means to be human with Neuralink, connecting our brains to the internet, make us smarter. While he's doing that, the best minds of our generation are trying to figure out how to get people to click more ads. This is a quote from Jeff Hammerbacher from Facebook. Elon uses it quite a lot. And we can't blame them. We know who they are. It's our big tech friends. We spend most of our days on them. But we can't blame them. This is how they raise the funds in order to bring us all these wonderful innovations that we adopt so eagerly into our lives. That's our choice. The biggest opportunity as we move into this digital world, full of numbers and data and exponential growth and technology hyper-connecting us, the biggest opportunity is going to be actually making emotional connections with people and using technology and data to do that better at scale. Because you see, people don't remember what you say. They won't even remember what you do. People remember how you made them feel. Because feelings give rise to emotions, and emotions are what makes memories stick. I was in the US last month, and someone said something pretty profound on the podium. He said, reach for somebody's wallet, and they'll protect their groin. They'll even turn their back on you. But reach for their heart, and they'll give you their wallet. For you, as developers, doing all these wonderful things with technology, trying to build flow into technology, your biggest opportunity will be on the soft skill side, because the more the pendulum swings that way, the more valuable the other side becomes. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. We're so good at building flow into technology, so good at it actually that we're addicting ourselves to it. We'll choose staring at a screen instead of engaging into a conversation. We see it every day, especially in the younger generations. And what I'm going to talk to you about is really about how can we use a process of building flow into technology and use that in order to build it into relationships. And I've been on this for quite some time. 2.5 years ago, I built a model on this, a model on how we're actually building relationships through technology. Let's have a look at the model for a second. On the one side, it's really the platforms. It's the internet, it's IoT, it's everything connected to it. It's the cloud. And I've summarized it up in one word in order to help people understand what this thing is. And it's really just the World Wide Web, linked devices that generate data. And there's so many devices that we call IoT, soon to be IoE when we're perpetually connected to it. Why big data? Because there's a lot of data. When you can connect that in meaningful ways, you can draw insights that helps you make decisions, which is what life is all about, making choices. And where some of these companies got in really early, like Google, they realized that information means everything to us. Nothing is real The future hasn't happened yet. The present is arguable whether it even exists, because when you hit it, it becomes the past. So it depends how you define it. So everything that's real is actually in the past. It's information that we've been exposed to. So Google collected the world's information and made it universally accessible and useful. Their mission statement to this day. They put up a search bar, they put the world behind it, and we went there and we asked them questions. We told them what we wanted. And that was key to Google's success. And how did they actually go into building relationships with us? Well, they made it very personal. Nothing's much personal than Google. All these results, everyone gets different ones now. Depending on what they know about you, they can give you more personalized results. It's a relationship you're entering into. If you're looking up the Google Assistant, you know that I'm feeling lucky button? That's their audacious statement to say, one day we're going to get it right. One day we're going to get it right on the first go. Until that day, we're just going to keep making mistakes. Personalization, readdressing the needs and wants of people. The next step is experiences, building an experience that earns your attention, because unless you have someone's attention, you can't tell them a story. And we're in an attention economy now. I'm sure you're all reading about it. That's what these big tech companies buy up, our attention, because in our attention is our behavior, and in our behavior is our data. And that's why the privacy on the other side, because this is really us, how we're behaving with the system, what we're giving to the system, for the system to help us. We're entering into a relationship, and that's a choice. The next step is empowerment, and this is really about solving problems, building flow into technology. I mean, look at Uber, for example. It manifests itself into an app on your phone. What is it? You click a button, a car pulls up, you step in, you have a pleasant conversation, and you just walk out. They've moved the friction out of mobility. Amazon Go, these tech and data-driven stores, they call it just walk out technology. You walk in, you take what you want, and you just walk out. Very hard to shoplift in that sort of ecosystem, unless you can steal someone's identity. The next step is value, which is all about managing expectations in a relationship context. Understand the expectations of the person you're dealing with. Understand the expectations of your customer. Over-deliver just a little bit. Under-promise. Over-deliver. That's a strategy to make people happy in the end, because at the end of the day, what we seek, the older we get, is to have one of the KPIs that you're going to start giving to yourself the older you get is how many days can I truly say that I'm happy? That's one of the things we'll always admit to. Another one is health, but we never admit to that because we feel guilty till it becomes too late. And wealth, which isn't just money, it's everything. And that's really about enjoying the bounty life has to offer. Health, wealth, and happiness. But I use happiness here. It's a bit of a controversy because when you make people happy, they come back for more. And that's what makes this thing sustainable, because we keep going back to it. We keep going back to those brands. We keep connecting to the internet. And that's what gives it exponential nature. But I started to realize this isn't just through technology. This model also applies to the real world. And in technology, we use a process called design thinking, user-centric design. Just a show of hands, who's familiar with design thinking? Not that many hands yet. So this is how Google, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, you name it, they use design thinking, focus on the user, solve the problems for the user, introduce flow into technology. You start with the user, you empathize with them, figuring out what's on their mind. What are they thinking about? And then what are their challenges? So you define the problem, you ask why multiple times, really get to the core of the problem that you're trying to solve, and then you ideate for solutions on that problem. You prototype, show, don't tell, create action, and then you test. And this is really about a feedback mechanism in order to understand how is the technology being used, and through iterative process, you improve and improve and improve and improve. That's why these apps keep updating themselves on your phone. This is just a rollout of an MVP, testing features. But when you look at it, it actually has a lot of similarity with people-to-people conversations, because really it's about understanding what's on the other person's mind, knowing what they want, figuring out the challenges that they have, stopping them from getting to what they want, helping them solve that, taking action, which is the prototype, and getting feedback, which is actually caring and trying to learn how they're adapting, how they're behaving. Now, I'm going to come back to this design thinking with a 4-step process in a couple of slides. But before that, I want to get into a little bit of human psychology. Who here has watched Red Sparrow? A lot of you. So for the ladies here, take your boyfriends there because they'll love it. And for the guys, take your girlfriends there because they'll love it too, right? What is it, Jennifer Lawrence? She kicks ass in the end. Amazing. But there's a couple of really profound quotes in this movie. One of them is this one. People are a puzzle of needs. Become the missing piece and they will give you everything. Because you see, our lives is just one big problem. That we're all going to die someday. That's a fate we all share. But when you break this big problem down into tiny problems, it's actually a million tiny problems. And that's where all the tech startups are pouncing on these things and trying to solve them, often through technology and data. And what you need to do is try to build yourself into the solution. And that's what these technology companies are doing. They're building themselves into the solution, and it ends up into something like this, just apps on your phone. This is a behavioral space you have in control. You choose which apps you put on this phone. When you look at it, it's a reflection of yourself. It's even called the iPhone. It's all about me. It's all about making me better until I use too much of it. Then I have to make a choice. But all these apps that you choose to put on that phone are solving at least one problem for you. And technology companies are building themselves into the solution to these problems. But you can do the same thing with conversations, with people. Build yourself into the solution. Another really important quote, not from this movie, this is a much more profound quote, is the secret to getting what you want in life is to connect what you want with what the other person wants. And to do that, you need to know, firstly, what you want, and then you need to know what they want. And the best way to find out what you want or what they want is just to ask. Ask yourself, what do you want? Ask the other person, what do they want? And that's what we all fear, because we fear the judgment of other people, what they're going to think about us. Now I'm going to tell you a little rule. It's called the 18-40-60 rule. And when I came across this rule, it really changed my life. At 18 years old, all you care about is what other people think of you. When you get into your 40s, you don't care about what anybody thinks of you. When you turn 60, you suddenly realize no one's been thinking of you at all. You see, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. What matters is what you think of yourself. And even when other people are thinking of you, all they're thinking about is how you're thinking of them. So don't worry about it and ask, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They ask the right questions. They're not afraid to ask the right questions. They take the risk to ask these questions. Look at Google, for example. What is it? It's a Q&A machine. They've built a Q&A machine. They've put the world's information behind a search bar, and you go there and you tell them what you want every single time when you ask a question. And they can never get it right. They're the company that's made the most mistakes in human history. They can't get it right. They keep giving you a choice. But every time they do, and every time you go there and ask a question, they are learning. That's how they become so successful. So let's go back to our design thinking process. There are 4 key questions I want you to go away with. And this is a process on how to actually build flow into conversations, into relationships. The first question you need to try and answer is, what's on your mind? What's on the other person's mind? Because what's on their mind is actually going to be a framework to how they're going to make decisions during the conversation and actually for days and weeks to come. You just don't know. So you should ask. You don't necessarily have to ask what's on your mind, but it's a question you need to get answered. And you can ask it in any way you can. It depends how much time you have. Who here is not on Facebook? Who has deleted it? Holy jeez. It's like 20% of the audience almost deleting Facebook. So you're really onto the hashtag. So when you were on Facebook, and for the ones that are on Facebook, if you fire it up in your app now, you fire that app up, what is the first words right at the top? What's on your mind? Because when you know what's on someone's mind, you know how they're making decisions. And now you can influence them in much more meaningful ways. The next question is, what do you want? Because we all want stuff. And that's actually one of the problems that we have, is that we want stuff we can't get. But for the other person, it's a big opportunity, because when you can start to understand how they perceive the challenges that are getting in the way of what they want, the obstacles that are in the way, that's your opportunity on the other end of the conversation. So the next step is actually finding out, what are the challenges? And most people don't even know what the challenge is. They don't know what the problem is, or they'll think something, but actually the problem goes much deeper. So then you use design thinking principles, the 5 whys, really getting down to the core of the problem, iterating with them, trying to find solutions to this problem. And the last step is, how can I help? This is about building yourself into the solution, because remember, success in life is lining up what you want with what the other person wants. Build yourself into the solution, but you can only do that if you understand their challenges, you understand what they want, and how are these challenges getting in the way of that. And firstly, what's on their mind, because this is their decision-making vehicle right now, their value system, their belief system. And finally, having strategic objectives, knowing what you want. And that's often the biggest problem. We don't know what we want. Existential question. We keep searching for it all the time. So this is probably the biggest challenge that we have, is understanding what we want. And the best way to understand that is really to ask yourself that question. Back to psychology. A couple of principles I operate by that have really, really completely transformed everything I do. Build trust, which is the key pillar of any relationship. When trust goes, it becomes a transaction. And we're building distributed ledgers, blockchain, in order to solve this problem. Take trust out of the equation, outsource trust to technology. But in a human relationship context, trust is key, because otherwise you have a transaction. Build trust by acting in the other person's best interest. It's as simple as that. It's one sentence. You don't need to read a book on this. They will want more of you, because when you act in the other person's best interest, when your intent is really to make them better, to make them more successful, then guess what happens? All they want is to have more of you in their life. Another one is make people feel important and appreciated. This is probably the most important and most practical one for you, because this is what brings us to work. This is what drives us. This is why we go to work. We want a feeling, remember, of importance and appreciation. Importance that the work we do matters. And appreciation for turning up to work. So as a manager, as a team manager, anyone that's leading anybody, which is all of us, we're all leading somebody. We're all leading many people. We're all leaders. It's about making other people feel important and appreciated. And when you can reverse engineer that, if that's why people are coming up to work, then apply these principles and they'll give you everything. And they'll want to have you around them more often. So at 12:45, I'll be giving a little workshop. It's going to dive a little bit deeper into this 4-step process. I'll be presenting to you a 8-step checklist that I use in order to start a meeting. This has been really important to me because we're all going so quickly. How do we sort of slow down and make sure that we're present during the meeting, that we're listening? We'll be doing a bit of empathy training. Really, listening is the most powerful tool you have. And if we have time, we'll go into an interview process and apply this 4-step process in order to have the best outcomes out of a conversation. And just a little thing, The Coaching Habit is a book that I read a couple of years back. It describes this process actually in 7 steps. It's much more involved. The 4-step process I showed you is more of an adaptation on how I use it, because at the end of the day, you need to remember all this stuff while in a conversation. And it can be in 1 minute, but it can also be in 1 hour. So you need to have something tangible. So for me, it was easier to dissect it down to a 4-step process. But this book, I highly recommend it. It's a really good read. If you're leading a team or you're a manager, then applying the coaching habit to the way that you coach and manage and guide and lead people is a really, really powerful asset to have. Before I leave you, one more quote. Now, this quote came to me by someone very special in my life. The person that actually trained me how to be a speaker, Eric Edmeades. And he told me this: be so good they can't ignore you. This is so relevant today. And it's not meant to be arrogant. It's meant to get the best version out of you as an organization, towards your shareholders, towards your stakeholders. towards your employees, towards your customers and your partners. Be so good they can ignore you. But also as teams within an organization, trying to have more impact, trying to get the resources from the stakeholders so that you can build your technology. Be so good they can ignore you. And as individuals. Now, I know that most people won't do anything about this right now. Maybe your time has come, maybe it was something of the past, and this is just a reminder. Maybe your time hasn't come yet. But I can guarantee you one thing, there's at least one person in this room that's absolutely going to do something about it. And right now, whoever you are, I'm talking to you. Be so good, they can ignore you. Thank you.